Alright, so if you guys don't have a gigantic puller like I used to have in my other videos, and you're trying to take these things apart, I'm going to show you the easy way, how I used to do it by hand, and how I currently do it by hand, because I turned my puller back into a log splitter. So the first thing you're going to need to do is cut it apart. If you're trying to use a grinder, sawzall, it's not going to be efficient. Torches are not efficient. Plasma is the way to go, although I would not suggest buying a thermodynamics machine. These things kind of suck. I would suggest hypertherm, but this one will work for what I'm doing. This one's bigger than the hypertherm I have. I had to buy this in a pinch, and they didn't have the hypertherm 45, so I had to get this. Yeah, so it's going to get loud here in a second. There's a lot of toxic fumes that come out of this. Pretty much hit you right in the face when you're cutting them, so I would suggest wearing at least a respirator or a PAPR system, which you will see me wear. Alright, so here's an important note to take. You see all that fumes just kind of blowing out into my face there? I did not get any of that. I think I got a whiff of it for about a half second, but that PAPR system will really keep you, it keeps your face out of the smoke. Another thing to keep in mind is that this is not water that is in there. It is some sort of mineral oil. There was not a whole lot in this one, but yeah, that's not water. It is some sort of mineral oil. It's pretty toxic, I've heard. Alright, now this thing's cut apart, you can see what we're left with here. All these tubes on the inside, they might look copper, but they're actually steel. This thing has some bolts holding it in. We got to get them off. There's multiple ways to do that. Some people use a hammer. Some people will grind them bolts. This is actually one of the weird things on all these units that I do. I do actually prefer the right style on fastener. It's actually extremely easy to get most of these bolts off. They usually are not stuck. This tool is not that labor intensive. It will save your hands a lot compared to using a hammer. And as you can see, I just zipped them off a lot quicker than if I were to use a hammer or a grinder. Alright, I got interrupted. So sometimes you need a hammer to just kind of persuade these things a little bit. I think sometimes I actually used to cut them tubes. If I can find my grinder, here it is. Yeah, sometimes I'll cut them tubes. And this thing should pop off of here real nice and easy. Maybe not super easy, but we got it off of there. That would be shred. And these, it looks like on this one, I'm going to need the impact gun again. Most of these do not have a double bolted system. But part of the reason why we take the bolts out is because we can save them for the next stage of the operation. This table used to be filled with bolts up until about 2 months ago. Just because they're so useful, and I do destroy them every now and then. Alright, so now we got our stator. We're almost done with it. And then you're going to have this stuff here. There's people in Pakistan that will pan these cast aluminum things off of here. And honestly, it is not worth it to me. I'll rather just send that to the hammer mill and let them deal with it. That aluminum doesn't weigh hardly anything, and the price is not that great to justify pounding it off, in my opinion. Alright, so now that we have just our stator, we're going to send it through the chop saw station. Some people use a Sawzall for this. I've always used this thing. It works out really well. And I'm not really going through blades all that often when I'm just cutting copper and aluminum windings. So normally you will see that I just cut one end off and then rip the other end out by hand. But because of the size of this one I might actually be able to get by hand. It might be difficult, but I can probably get it. When you get bigger than this, The chances of you getting this out by hand are slim to none. I spent 3-4 hours trying to rip one of these out with my fencing pliers, and this 3 to 4 hours of my life I will never get back. So I found a better way. Well, actually somebody helped me find a better way. I didn't come up with this all on my own. So we're going to cut both ends of the copper off. Now you might be thinking, man, why would you do that? You're leaving all that copper in the steel. I'll show you. That one is actually all copper, which is really good. Some of these are aluminum, and you won't know that until you grind into them. The people in Pakistan are ripping these out totally by hand, not checking to see if they're copper or aluminum, and that is probably messing up their copper ingots really bad, and they don't know it. So yeah, always cut at least one side off. Alright, so now that second end is off. That'll go in the copper bucket. We can put our earmuffs down, and I'll zoom you in over here. That's what I'm doing. Alright, so you guys can see that we got our copper thing, our copper stator, the stator, what's left of it anyway with the copper. It is, it's in a vise. So now this is where those old bolts come in handy. The bolt that just pulled out of the same unit this came from, I'm going to grab with my fencing pliers, and I'm going to take a hammer and put the bolt on the copper and whack it. That'll drive the copper pretty much right down through the stator. I'm going to have a copper bucket underneath it, and that's how we're going to collect all the copper. If you get any of these that are mixed, copper and aluminum, this is how you minimize the damage. If you're doing this, you know, you're going to have like 4 of these things will be filled with aluminum. The rest will all be straight copper, or vice versa. And you pretty much pound out the copper, then put your aluminum bucket underneath it and pound out the aluminum. Then you'll have some that are copper and aluminum in the same hole. Sometimes you can get skilled enough where you can separate where you're hitting to drop separate metals into your bucket. Sometimes it all just falls out together. So this is kind of a lot slower than using a hydraulic cooler, but if you're not set up correctly, even some of the hydraulic coolers are pretty slow. So this is a way you can still get things done without any fancy equipment. You know, you can get even fancier and custom build a table with a hole in it specifically for knocking copper out like this. But this works for me for the time being. Alright, and now as you can see, all of the copper is out of that stator. There might be a few strands left, but I'm not really worried about it. If you watched the print a couple months ago, almost a year ago now, he made a video where he bought like 3,000 pounds of these things. And there was at least one he could not get apart by hand because he was trying to rip the copper just straight out of it. Like I said, I had one that I was fighting for 3 or 4 hours. Pretty much the same deal as him, and you know, this is the way around that. Even when you do this, sometimes you'll have some that do fight you. Sometimes you'll get them bolts stuck. Again, like I said, this whole table used to be filled with bolts that I would try to repurpose into copper pounders. So, yeah. Now this steel, some people can throw it in their prepared steel. I don't have a lot of it, so it'll just go in my shred pile. And we're going to move on with life. Alright, so hopefully y'all guys learned something from this. Funny side story, I made a video about how to pull apart electric motors and sealed units a while ago when I was first starting YouTube. I'm not that great at the video part of it, if you haven't noticed. But I made one that was like pretty good, and it was about electric motors, how to pull them apart. And around that time was when China stopped buying a lot of things like AC compressors and electric motors and whatnot. And for a while they were going to like Malaysia and Indonesia, and then I made that video, and somebody from Pakistan must have watched it, and now there's a lot of Pakistan people pulling these sealed units apart pretty much exactly the way that I showed them in the video, except they do things, like I said, a little bit more basic and a little bit more involved, with just hammers and chisels and a torch. So it's kind of crazy to think that just some random YouTube video could have changed the whole global market of these sealed units. That was not my intention, but that might have been what happened. I can't say for sure that my video caused that, but all these things are going to Pakistan now, and yeah, they're pretty much doing exactly what I did, and it's really strange. So I'm half inclined to believe that my video has played a part in that. So, little side note. Yeah, so hopefully this helps somebody out there. If you like the video, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. If not, I really don't care. Hopefully somebody out there learned it.